Hi everyone, Justine here with another video. So today I wanted to share a really amazing book called The Code Breaker, which is a biography about Jennifer Doudna, and Jennifer is one of the key inventors of CRISPR, a gene editing technology, and CRISPR has genuinely revolutionized how we see the future of medicine. It's really opened up doors in terms of the potential to cure certain diseases such as sickle cell anemia and others that have a genetic component. And Jennifer Doudna recently won a Nobel Prize for some of her work related to this. So definitely someone who is worth learning more about and learning from. So I wanted to share just a couple lessons from that book today, and I highly recommend that you give it a read or watch one of her TED Talks as well. But just starting with number one, and that is to be a midfielder. So this lesson comes from, first of all, way back when Jennifer was a young girl and playing soccer in Hawaii, and she ended up becoming a midfielder in order to fill a certain niche, because apparently, and I don't really know much about soccer, but a midfielder position at that time in her school was not a very popular position, and also one that not many people could fill because you had to be really tall and lanky. And so she just so happened to be able to fill that role, and that's how she was able to be successful in that sport. And then taking that on further in her life, when she was getting her PhD and she was at Harvard, and she was working a lot on biological research and biochemistry research specifically, she decided to focus on RNA along with her PhD advisor. And why is this important or relevant? Well, at that time, most people weren't focusing on RNA. There was the Human Genome Project that was going on, and so a lot of people were focusing on DNA. And moreover, their project was on visualizing RNA, which basically a lot of people in the field had given up on doing because it was so difficult to try and visualize the structure, and so no one was really working on that. And it was this specific niche, along with the fact that there was kind of an untapped potential if one were able to actually visualize the structure, because of the hypothesis that RNA might have been the very first molecule to kind of be the precursor to life on Earth. So because of the fact that she chose to take that risk, that is how she was able to kind of build expertise in a field where not many people had it. And that is actually what led her to kind of get involved in CRISPR, because people knew her as an expert on RNA. So all that to say that it is extremely valuable to take the time to figure out where your skills, your interests, and an untapped opportunity all align. Because if you can do that, then you can really become an expert in the space. And what you really need to do is get enough hours in and enough exposure in that you are able to kind of interact at the top of the field. And that's really how you'll become an expert and become someone who's invaluable in the space. Now, the second lesson that I want to share is really a quote from James Watson, who is one of the people who helped discover the structure of DNA. If you remember Watson and Crick from your high school biology class. And James Watson had this very poignant quote that he said he got from his parents, which is that hypocrisy in search of social acceptance erodes self-respect. Now think about that for a second. I think that a lot of us kind of give away parts of ourselves or hide parts of ourselves in search of social acceptance. And I don't think that there is enough talk about really truly valuing yourself and respecting yourself to be who you really are. And part of the challenge, of course, is figuring out who you are, right? But assuming that there are certain things that you understand about yourself, you really have to make a decision in terms of what it is that you're willing to kind of sacrifice, or just let yourself be a black sheep in some respects and let people think that you're a little bit weird. And I really do think that as long as you're not hurting anyone, we need to be able to understand and respect more differences in terms of little idiosyncrasies that people have or different ways of viewing the world. And I think that part of why our politics, at least here in the US, and I think a lot of other places in the world, are more divided than ever, is that we've developed a lower tolerance for dealing with different points of view. And so I think that when you contemplate whether or not you want to try to hide who it is that you really are, what you really think, because you want social acceptance, to consider whether you are trading that for your self-respect. Now, I'm not saying to be disrespectful to other people, and that was kind of the dark side of James Watson's quote, in that he was someone who had a ton of self-respect, to the point of being a little bit conceited and offensive to a lot of people. But I think that it depends on your values, but it's very much something that can be done in terms of being yourself truly and authentically, but just not being rude or disrespectful to others at the same time. So that's something to chew on, depending on where you are or where you think you are on this spectrum of seeking social acceptance versus preserving self-respect. And hopefully this helps you to kind of find where it is along that line that you want to be. And now on to the third lesson that I want to share with you all, which is to learn how to balance collegiality with competition. So one thing that I thought was so fascinating about this book was getting to see a behind the scenes peek of the competition that went on, and I guess kind of the politics that went on behind all of these major scientific discoveries. So for example, you may have heard of the controversy with Rosalind Franklin with the discovery of the DNA double helix. And just a quick summary of what was going on there: James Watson and Francis Crick actually used some crystallography results, basically images that Rosalind Franklin had put together of DNA, and used that in developing their hypothesis for the structure. And this was in the context of a huge global competition of people racing to try and figure out the structure as quickly as possible so that they could claim the title of being the one to discover this amazing feat. And so Rosalind Franklin never got credit really while she was alive, and unfortunately she actually died of ovarian cancer before Watson and Crick, and I forget who the third person was, actually won the Nobel Prize. So she wasn't even eligible to receive the prize because it's not awarded posthumously. But that was, I would say, an example of a poor balance between collegiality and competition, because of the fact that there was just a lack of integrity and a lack of being upfront with how things are going to be used and how you wanted to proceed moving forward. Whereas I felt that when it came to the race to uncover CRISPR as a gene editing technology, Doudna really conducted herself in an exemplary way. And I think the most poignant example for me was when Doudna, as well as some competing colleagues, were presenting research at the same conference on the same topic, and it pretty much so happened that everyone thought that the presentation by Doudna and her colleagues was much better and much more thorough in terms of its results. And so her and those competitors actually had dinner together at a sushi restaurant in Berkeley right after that day when they had presented back to back. And one of the competitors asked Doudna, "Hey, do you think that we should just retract our paper?" because of the fact that Doudna et al.'s paper had just been received so much better. And Doudna said, "No, what you're doing is adding something to the field, and you should definitely still move forward with publication." And also in the context of all the machinations where that competing group had actually fought to be put first before Doudna's team could, so that way they could kind of potentially one-up them if their results were better. That in all of that going on, I think that she handled herself well with decorum. Not that she was unwilling to show her ambition or show the fact that she wanted to compete and to be the best, but to do it with integrity and to be able to still grab sushi with people who you're competing with, and to also exchange knowledge and information with one another to advance the greater good that you are all going for. So I thought that was quite inspirational and a great lesson for anyone who is going into a competitive field, which feels like it's every single field these days. Alright everyone, so that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. This is really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of all there is to learn about science and how to be a good human from the book The Codebreaker, so I do highly recommend that you read it, but hopefully it was helpful for you all, and have a great day. Bye now!